From hip-hop artist Zuby. I don't know why people look at me weirdly when I suggest that governments will intentionally kill their own citizens and or allow them to die unnecessarily if it suits their agenda. How many examples do you need? Do you think history has ended and we now live in a fairy tale? Judging from the media this week and the Grazers' reaction to it, I would have to say that the answer is a clear and resounding yes. The opinions expressed by the Reverend are his own and no one else's, not friends, not foes, not supporters, not detractors, not sponsors, and certainly not employers. They have been adjudicated thought crime in all jurisdictions. Consider yourself warned. They are coming from the heart. They are guided by the mind. They are guaranteed to choke you with a big, healthy, throbbing dose of the truth cock. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time once again for the Sunday Sermon. All the usual suspects on board early, man. Happy to see you guys out here. We got a lot of stuff to cover, man, and it's all going to be entertaining. Everybody in on the drum roll. Yes, sir. Hard charging out of the starting gate. We got Brother Ryan on board early. We got Dennis Weimer. We got Emmy. We got Ozman. What's going on? Brother James Pearson, man, saw you hanging out with Chad Turner earlier. I was happy to have been a part of that conversation remotely. I got tremendous respect for both of you guys, but you already knew that, man. Much love, brother, much love. It's nice that the family stretches out far and wide like that. We got Carrie from Opium Tales. We got Chris Reyes on board. Good to see you, my friend. Good to see you. Plenty more. Just kind of jumping in. Do me a favor, guys. As you arrive, sort of sound off over here in the comments. Let me know what format you're watching on so I know which one I have to do more work with. We're on my Twitter feed through Periscope. We're on the YouTube channel. We're on Facebook. And for those of you who might not know each other, give us a little insight. You know, drop like what part of the country you're jumping in from, whether it's up in the Northwest or whether it's down here in Houston, Texas with the heat. As Carrie pointed out just now, remember to like and share with all of your friends. That helps to bump us up in the algorithm. Again, algorithm, that mysterious word. You know, you can dumb it down for me. You can thoroughly explain it. You can even give me a clinical definition, and I'm still going to look at you like, algorithm? What the fuck are you talking about, man? All I know is that when you give us thumbs up and when you like and you share, it bumps us up a little bit higher in the queue, and it makes it easier for other like minds and kindred spirits to find the program. So, for all of you guys, I got a lot of my Texas people on board. Lance Joseph Gill, hello, hello. Hello and welcome all. I don't know if it's showing me everyone over here in the comments. I'm still sorting through a lot of this stuff. I'm no John McAfee by any stretch of the imagination, except in the sense that I have no intention of killing myself either. Yeah, but there's that. Anyway, we'll be covering all of that stuff, man. Plenty to get into, man. It's been an interesting week. I don't think there's going to be any kind of overarching theme to this whole thing. I think this was going to be kind of disjointed, sort of a scattergun effect. We're going to be all over the place. But I got a ton of tabs up here that I want to cover, so let's just get into it, man. Bobby Wilson, what's up, my friend? Glad you made it out. Good stuff. Going to be nice to know that it's the same old Bart, you know. A little bit bigger, a few more tattoos, more of an attitude, fewer teeth. Those of you guys who were following my posts for the past couple of days, you know what's up with that. We've got the mighty Stone on board, Brother Joel. Bobby holding it down from Tar Heel country, man. I'm glad you made it out. Man. Hopefully you'll be pleased with the way this thing rolls, man. Well, let's go ahead and fade the music out so we can jump into this thing. That bumper music, as always, I want to remind you guys, for those of you that missed it the first couple of 100 times we told you what it is, from a band called Red Desert out of the smoldering ruins of Minneapolis, Minnesota. The name of the band is Red Desert. The name of the track is Older, No Wiser. want to check out the whole album. But we decided to pick that track for the bumper music because every week I get a little bit older, and every week you guys get to decide if I've gotten any wiser. Some weeks I'm hitting a little bit better than others. Before we get into this thing, let me go ahead and give the proper sponsor shout outs here. Pull up my controls over here in the StreamYard control panel over here on the right-hand side. And by the way, if you guys want to put your own streams together, man, this StreamYard thing, I looked at a bunch of different multi-stream softwares and websites to do this kind of thing. StreamYard is pretty intuitive. Some of my unindicted co-conspirators are using it. I know Todd Fossey is using it. I believe GN Paula Rubio from Funker Tactical is using it now. Both close friends of mine. Love those guys. But yeah, it's fairly intuitive, but I'm kind of an idiot, so I'm still learning my way around. Let me give the sponsor shout outs, and we'll knock that out. First of all, to my dear friend Roman and his lovely wife over at Opium Tales, and of course the bevy of beautiful women over there, Roxy and Allie and the whole lot. They are the erotic pinups and portraits people. You can check them out at opiumtales.com, because in the height of irony, Jack Boots Dorsey has booted Roman and Opium Tales from the Twitter feed. They are, it's beautiful portraits of beautiful women and peppered with testosterone-driven commentary, and we're all about that. Our other flagship sponsor, Nordic Smoke Barbecue, Casey and Dusty Tellison, and you can read it for yourself. The only legit barbecue in the inland Northwest. They are my Viking brothers from up in the Spoke. Nordic Smoke, get some, motherfuckers. Brother Dusty celebrating a birthday this week, and brother Casey coming closer and closer and closer to the release of his book from Latop Press out of Spokane, Washington. The book is going to be called Freaks of a Feather, about his time in the military as a saw gunner for the United States Marine Corps. He's a combat vet and one hell of a gifted writer. I got an advanced copy of the manuscript because Bart and I've read it. It's phenomenal writing. There have been excerpts already published in the New York Times and several other major press outlets. I think this book is going to be a tremendous hit. And I want all of you guys out there to do what you can to make it go viral and to push it up in the, what's the college word again? Algorithm. Yeah. Hit it hard over at Amazon when it is released. And let's get that sucker some exposure. And again, once the release is official, I'll be reading some excerpts on the air, and you guys get to experience it for yourself. And one final shout out, because I got to see him again this morning from my good friend Dr. Patrick Platzer at Coreville Chiropractic, KOHRville Chiropractic. He is off of 249 and Spring Cypress, up on the far north side of Houston, Texas. That is his number, 281-990-2225. Dr. Patrick Platzer. We have a long history, me and him. He's got a very unique approach, and it's a very effective approach. And again, some of my back pain revisited me recently, and I've been going and seeing him on the weekends because it's the only time that I have off work to go see him. But definitely make the call. And again, Coreville Chiropractic, you can find him online, or you could once again call the number that is 281-990-2225. If you are in the Houston area, set up an appointment with the man. He's going to get you fixed up, because we already know what kind of wreckage I'm dealing with, and I'm walking around pretty good these days. So on top of the back damage this week, I got visited with some more tooth maladies. I had another one break off. I think I'm down to like 7 now, maybe. I don't know. We could get in here with a dental pick and count, but I'm not going to put you to that. But yeah, I had another one break off, and them breaking off is not terribly uncommon, nor is it terribly painful because the nerve is dead. But this one got infected, so I was scrambling around trying to find antibiotics. Thankfully, someone local who was a friend of mine blessed me with an antibiotic stash, and I'm very thankful for that. I'm not going to call them out because, again, passing that off is not strictly legal, but I needed something to bridge the gap until I could get a legit script for antibiotics, and now I have one. I was all chipmunk-cheeked before. You can see the swelling is still kind of an issue, so I'm going to give you my good side. That's a lie. I have no good side. We all know better. But yeah, so that's where we're at. That's where the week's been. And what do you say we go ahead and jump right into it, shall we? First thing that we're going to get into is that ever popular segment, Ryan's Rabbit Hole. That is right, man. Ryan's Rabbit Hole. Let me get that. Yes. Yes. Little applause for Ryan's Rabbit Hole. Viva Referencia Obscura. Ryan's Rabbit Hole. And this week, we've got an interesting one that works on a number of levels. Now, again, we don't do deep dives on these rabbit holes. Again, we just kind of show you, hey, here's the rabbit hole, and you get to decide how deep you want to take it. But it's always some fascinating and pretty obscure stuff. This week, we are dealing with physicist and scientist Abraham Avi Lieb. Yeah, he's an Israeli-American theoretical physicist. He's done a ton of work on some of the more mainstream elements of science, but where he falls out with a lot of the scientific establishment is the fact that, well, up until a couple of months ago, where the US government made it okay to admit that such things exist, he was an early adopter in talking about extraterrestrial life. One of the theories that he covers is panspermia, where it's a peer-reviewed paper that he published about the possibility that life can propagate from one planet to another. There's been plenty of theories on that. A lot of theories about cephalopods being of extraterrestrial origin, that certain life forms can get picked up when comets slam into planets that support life and carried on to the next thing if it's a type of life that can, survive the cold of deep space. Like a prion, a cockroach, or democratic cognitive dissonance. So there's that. But lately he's been on board with, and I'm pronouncing it to the best of my ability, Oumuamua, which I believe is Hawaiian for big fucking space rock, in the same way that shillelagh is from the Gaelic meaning big fucking stick. The theory that he floated was that it is not, in fact, a comet. He floated this thing drifted in to our solar system, and it's been, and again, I should probably spell this for the sake of it. It's Oumuamua, Oumuamua. Yeah, spelled like you would expect a Hawaiian spelling. Big fucking space rock, asteroid, comet. That's what all the other scientists are saying about it. But Mr. Lieb is of the opinion that this thing may be a remnant of some long expired intergalactic civilization, that it is in fact what he has defined as a light sail. Yeah, a light sail, a propulsion system, primitive by some standards and way fucking advanced by others, that may be a remnant, a relic of a lost and now extinct galactic advanced civilization. There's plenty of studies to be done on it. I'm going to let you guys decide how deep you want to go down the rabbit hole. But yes, Avi Lieb, AVI, his actual name is Abraham, Father Abraham, who had 7 sons, forget it. Anyway, so Abraham Avi Lieb, Loeb. Definitely check it out, and particularly where it gets into Oumuamua, because that big fucking space rock could have a lot of ties in with the spate of UFO activity and the fact that the government is finally coming clean on that. Maybe they know something that we don't. Purely speculation. I leave it up to you. But that, Avi Lieb and Oumuamua, is Ryan's rabbit hole for the week. So thank you to Ryan Jenkins for sending that along. Now, we're about, I'm going to call it 15 minutes in. About time for that first sip of liquid enthusiasm, just to refuel here. I hope you guys have had a good week. A lot of good, interesting things going on in the news. I promised that we were going to cover some interesting events on the domestic front and on the foreign front. And of course, the highlight of the day, the latest high-profile non-suicide. Suffices to say this early in the program, and we'll deal with it a little more later. What does it say about the media and our perception that the word Epstein Epstein is an expression, is an acceptable word that is part of the lexicon now. Anyone who dies under mysterious circumstances, and it's patently obvious for anyone with two brain cells to rub together that this was not a suicide and it was not an accident, and this is a high-profile individual with some damning information on high-ranking, very powerful people. If they die under mysterious circumstances, it is described as them being Epstein. And much like a much larger contingent of the grazer demographic than any of us would care to admit, a lot of people will still maintain that it was a legit suicide. And you know what? You can make a case for that. In the same way that you could make a case for legit suicide with Epstein, you could make it for the gentleman we'll be discussing later. For all I know, by this point, YouTube might be banning videos for even mentioning the guy's name, but we're going to take a chance a little bit later. Epstein could have been a legit suicide. Once he figured out that the same brutal sex he'd inflicted on underage girls was going to be inflicted on him by Bubba the Aryan Thundercock, once he arrived in federal prison, I can see why a motherfucker would want to hang himself. But again, we all kind of know better, don't we? And again, if that is your theory, cool, roll with it. I'm not going to try to talk you off of it anymore, because at this point my speculation is just as good as yours. Your speculation is just as good as mine. You know, the facts, if they ever come out, are going to be buried and redacted and misleading like they normally are. What I will say is this: at least be consistent. Because there is one guy out there, a friend of mine, a prominent Houston comedian, I'm not going to call him out, but he has maintained forever that Oswald acted alone, first of all. He sticks with the theory that Oswald acted alone. He maintains that Epstein was a legitimate suicide, you know, because he's the eternal skeptic, and yet was part of the contingent that beat us over the head for 4 years with the ridiculous notion that Orange Man was a Russian puppet. Again, as long as we're talking debunking and as long as we're talking shelf life, whatever, you know, whatever helps you sleep at night, buddy. I'm not going to try to talk you off of it, Sparky, but at least kind of be consistent, man. If you're going to be a skeptic, then you got to be a skeptic about all of it. If you're going to be skeptical about Epstein not being a suicide, or the other person not being a suicide, or JFK being clipped by a conspiracy involving God knows who, at least take a look at the Steele dossier and go, yeah, that's probably bullshit. But consistency isn't exactly a long suit with these folks, is it? Yep, we all know better. Let me get these banners back on. We're going to go ahead and get that. And let's roll with this one along the bottom for right now. Yeah, so. But before we get to that, interesting things on the domestic front. I have discussed with you before on previous sermons. Again, much is being made. People are all over critical race theory. People are all over the notion of white privilege. And what I have maintained and what I continue to maintain is that this is not about equality. This is about payback. That, as Tim Pool put it, that they would get into social policing, because it is easier for a police department, particularly people who are having monumental difficulties in this political climate, doing a legitimate job as law enforcement officers, that ultimately it becomes easier to appease the mob than to actually enforce the law. Case in point, the Portland Police Department, the besieged Portland Police Department, let me say, because the Antifa maggots have still not stopped rioting, nor will they ever. And I think we all know how I feel about that. Right. But the besieged Portland Police Department was placed in, let's say, a dynamic evolution of a violent episode at some point this week, and they shot a suspect. The suspect turned out to be a homeless man, no doubt a drug addict, and into all manner of being a predatory miscreant, but they shot the guy. Immediately, Antifa reacted in the way that they always do. Another example of systemic police racism. They shot down an unarmed black man and we're going to mobilize. And they put it on social media. Unarmed black man shot by police. They put it on flyers. They spread the word. Unarmed black man shot by police. and they planned more direct action, as if the riots ever stopped in Portland. And spare me the justifications, because I see you out there rolling your eyes and I really could give a fuck less. Here's what the police did. They came out with a press release that it was erroneous information. Crowd had formed at the scene of the shooting. As officers were attempting to clear the scene, this is according to Daily Caller, members of the hostile crowd slashed the tires of police vehicles, bashed out some windows, and the Portland police finally came out with a press release saying, "You have been misinformed. The suspect is deceased, but the suspect who was shot and killed was a white man." I'll wait for you guys to process that. When you're speaking with regard to social justice, this is ultimately what they mean when they say equity. This isn't about equal treatment under law. This is about payback. This means we went through 400 years of the Middle Passage. We now get a pass and you got to beat up Whitey. That's where we're at. Like it or lament it, that's where we're at. The Portland police decided that the way to quell possible riots was not to show up in force and put the riot down, was not to show up in force and set up barricades and actually take a stand against Antifa, because we already know how that rolls for the past year and a half. The DA is going to release the Antifa maggots on any charge that they might accrue, so the police might as well not show up. And knowing this, their effort to disperse and dissuade the crowd from rioting was to say, no, it's okay. You don't have to riot. It's just a white guy. Ponder that and its full implications and do with it what you will. But please don't look me in the face again and talk to me about systemic racist injustice in the criminal justice system, and certainly don't talk to me about white privilege, because we're past that point. If indeed it ever existed, we're way past that point now. The social justice warriors have done their evil fucking work, and it's open season on the blue-eyed devils. Brace yourself and act accordingly. I'm not saying woohoo race war, and if you are, you're an asshole. But at the end of the day, we have to recognize factual realities. One, the reality that has always existed is that when the race of the perpetrator and the victim differ, where interracial violent crime is concerned, and I've said this a million times and I'll say it a million more so I'm abundantly clear, the overwhelming majority of all violent crime is interracial. Same on same. But when the race of the perpetrator and the victim differ, it is black on white, almost to the point of exclusivity. According to the FBI uniform crime reports and different statistics, you can pick your source, but it works from 80 to 90% of all interracial violent crime is black on white. Don't take my word for it. Look it up for yourself. So what do? Instead of addressing that, we appease the mob. Now the cops can say, all right, we can't do this because it's going to get a social reaction and the mob is going to go nuts and they're going to burn down our buildings. And now it's gotten to the point where they dissuade the mob by saying, don't worry. The guy that we killed, sure, he was homeless. Sure, he was a junkie, but he was a white guy. So it's okay. Feel free to look that up. It happened. 25th of this month, earlier this week. The good news is people are waking up, and while we're on the subject of that, I'm going to touch briefly on critical race theory. I'm not going to get into it. We're not going to do a deep dive on that because, again, those of us with two brain cells to rub together can see how the mainstream media is framing the topic. First, they said critical race theory doesn't say what you say it says. Then they finally had to admit it when being confronted with the actual works of people like Ibram X. Kendi and people like that. They finally had to admit that, yes, in fact, it does say exactly what the fuck we thought it said, but it's not being taught in any of the schools. They're framing it that way because there's no actual book that they hand out to students that goes critical race theory for third grade students. There's nothing. They just teach word problems that are based in it. They teach they teach the white guilt train, the difference between oppressors and the oppressed. They teach that America is an inherently racist system, yada yada yada. All of these things, they're all being taught. They're just not being taught out of one uniform book that says, hey, here's our third grade critical race theory book. It's not that, but it is sprinkled liberally, pardon the pun, throughout the curriculum. And it's being taught to the kids. And the parents have finally figured it out. This is one of the good things that came from COVID, and one of the good things that came from remote learning, is that the indoctrination, and let's call it what it is, the indoctrination of American public schools was laid bare to a lot of parents. A lot of parents, because, again, they don't do deep dives. They listen to CNN or, God forbid, that Maddow guy over on MSNBC. They don't do deep dives, and they believe what they're told with regard to the curriculum of these high schools, and even down to the elementary school level. But with remote learning, guess what? The teachers had to teach, and the parents could be in the room watching the lesson plans. And a lot of people didn't get red pilled. They got a red suppository. It's like, this is what they've been teaching your kids for years. You didn't want to believe it, but now here it is right in front of you. Well, a school board in, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Loudoun County, Virginia, they had a massive protest coming out against it. And the response, rather than change the curriculum, they basically said, we're going to go back to remote school board meetings, because the last thing that they want is the reality of what they have unleashed thrown in their faces. Before, especially during the pandemic, all the school board meetings were conducted virtually, like through Zoom meetings and, telecalls, whatever. They're going to get back to that, because they had an open public meeting, and hundreds of parents, infuriated, quite properly infuriated parents, showed up and said, you will not be teaching this to our children. Again, this is the arrogance and hubris of the social justice brigade. They believe that they are morally in the right, and they give two flying fucks at 6 rolling donuts what the actual parents of the child have to say about it. They don't care about facts. Hence the 1619 Project, total fucking fabrication. They don't care about facts. They don't care about quoting actual statistics that are going to detract from their narrative. They teach these things to your children. Yeah, and now they're being exposed. The title of the article, by the way, on Daily Wire was "Wokeism Has Awakened the Most Formidable Opponent, the American Family." And I think that is a perfectly appropriate title. You guys know that I run hot and cold on Ben Shapiro. I can do a Ben Shapiro, but, I'm not enough amphetamine to be able to vocalize that quickly and enunciate the consequence with, that degree of verbal aplomb. That and the fact that I'm not wearing a yarmulke. But Daily Wire nailed it with that one. And the American family has, thanks largely to COVID and the lockdowns, and the way that education is being conducted remotely, and they've been able to be exposed to this stuff, and a lot of them are getting red pilled, and they're showing up now. They're showing up. That sort of involvement, and of course the media are framing it as, well, they wouldn't have shown up like that, but they were all like whipped into a frenzy by right-wing agitators. Alt-right agitators, to be fair. That's what they originally said, that the alt-right is agitating angry parents with misinformation. How dare we quote them in their own fucking words? Right. But that's where it's at. And thankfully, the tide has turned. I think, as I've said before, we don't do black pills around here. We're not going to get with that depression. We're not going to get with that, oh my God, the country's falling apart, our best days are behind us. I keep throwing things like this out to reassure you guys that no matter how fucking bad it is, we're not out of the fight. We're not out of the fight. And I firmly believe in my heart of hearts that we've hit a tipping point. That I don't want to use the word silent majority because it's cliched and all these other things. But again, we have hit that tipping point. We've hit that tipping point where a lot of people, not so much a silent majority, but just the people who didn't want to be fucked with, the people who just wanted to work and live their lives and raise their families and all of this kind of stuff, define them however you want, but they have been mobilized because, as is the tendency with the far left, they don't have it in them to not overreach. And they have consistently overreached. And this is another prime example. And the arrogance and hubris with which they are treating the response, rather than look at all these angry parents and say, hey, maybe we should re-examine this, they just doubled down because, of course, they're morally right. They're a cult. Try talking a Muslim off the divinity of the Quran. You will have more luck than talking a social justice warrior off of their bullshit rhetoric. They are a cult and a mob, nothing more. But again, the mob now has a counterweight. The mob now has the force and weight of people who have seen the light and are no longer going to be dissuaded by improper framing and the pushing of false narratives. And they're showing up. They're putting their ass where their rhetoric is. And there is nothing that side fears more than that reaction. Hello to a couple of people that have shown up in the interim while I was in the middle of that rant. Nicholas Carter Mills, good to see you, Nick. Glad you made it out. You're going to dig some of this stuff, and some of it you're not. Respectfully yours. I don't know, respectfully yours, I'm just going to assume that you're waiting under a bridge for 3 billy goats, because clearly that's a fucking troll. But anyway, if I am actually offending you, then mission accomplished. Rob Alexander just showed up. I have, people say that it's not rocket science. Well, for Rob, it actually is. He's a fucking rocket scientist. Why he hangs out with the likes of these tattooed ignorant thugs like myself, I have no idea, but I'm glad that he does. Good to see you on board, Rob. And of course, Brett Bennett on board for sure. I am for sure, but we were friends a long ass time. I'll go with it, man. I'll go with it. But yeah, no, I can handle, I got a sense of humor about that stuff. This sort of thing doesn't bother me. Here's another thing that came out this week. The Biden administration, following in the path of the Patriot Act. And for those of you that know me, you know that for 8 years of the Bush senior administration, I raged against the executive overreaches of the Alberto Gonzales Justice Department when he was Attorney General. And now the Biden administration, what's up, Kurt? The Biden administration, certainly not to be outdone, has embraced the same mechanisms of the Patriot Act. I think because of his cognitive decline, rather than fabricate his own domestic terror policy, I think he probably went, judging from the looks of it, he went back and he grabbed the Patriot Act and he substituted the words right-wing extremist for Muslim, because of the DOJ missives that are being put out. And again, you guys remember when Napolitano was head of the Department of Homeland Security. She was the one that coined the phrase, if you see something, say something. Well, they brought that one out of retirement, only now it's directed at American citizens that differ from the proper political narrative. If you are a Trump voter, you are a possible right-wing extremist. If you follow Ben Shapiro or anybody on the intellectual dark web, Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris, any of those people, if you follow any of those people, you are a potential right-wing extremist. And as a result of that, we have to keep you under surveillance constantly, as they did with, not just Muslims, but American citizens under the Patriot Act. Well, they're doing it all again. What this is showing me is which ones of my friends are principled and which ones are party over principle. Because I remember a lot of you, when I stood screaming about the outrages of the Patriot Act, stood right beside me, shaking your fist at God and the Bush administration. How dare they with the surveillance state? How dare they with extraordinary rendition? How dare they with shredding the Constitution? And now that your doddering fucking cadaver is in charge, he's doing the exact same thing. And what are you doing? Clapping like fucking harp seals waiting for fish at SeaWorld, you disingenuous fucks. That's what you're doing. It's the exact same thing. They just have a different target. And because you find the target acceptable and because you find the source acceptable, it's perfectly okay. Round them up. Put them on fucking boxcars. You don't give two flying fucks at 6 rolling donuts, do you? Put them on boxcars because they're enemies of the state. You have decided, and of course, you are morally right, just as the Bush Brigade thought that they were morally right. Here's the thing. In America, That's not how it rolls. You have a right to differing opinions. You have a right to wildly disparate opinions from the establishment. And you have the right, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, the right to peaceably assemble and petition your government for the redress of grievances. I can say whatever the fuck I want. We are either free to speak or we are not. But again, now we've got the rules placed on it. Every time the rules get placed on, there's always a justification. Under Bush, it was the boogie Muslim terrorist going to get you. You could build a better case for that because half the world really does want to see us dead based on that religion. But that doesn't give you the excuse to spy on American citizens. And that was where I took issue. And lo and behold, here I am, ideologically consistent, yet again, taking issue with these actions, no matter who's in charge. So for those of you who have followed me through these phases of my life and stood with me when the other team was in charge and said that this exact same action was wrong and now want to justify it because our cadaver in chief and that fucking Matt Al guy at MSNBC says it's okay, fuck right out of my life. Got no room for you anymore, Sparky. None. But here's the kicker. I say all that to say this. Sorry, I went off on a little tangent, which is like way out of character for me. I touch on that to touch on this. One of the directives that came down from the Department of Justice and Department of Homeland Security under the Biden administration was that one of the things to watch out for, because, you know, if you see something, say something. If you avoid social media interaction, that is one of the warning signs for being a potential right-wing domestic extremist. I'm not making it up. Don't take my word for it. Look it up for yourself. If you avoid, let me say this again. If you avoid social media interaction, if you eschew, reject, dismiss having a presence on social media, that may be indicative of you being a radicalized domestic right-wing extremist. Now, keep in mind, they're saying this at the same time that Defense One is putting out an article saying it's harder to boot right-wing extremists from social media than ISIS. I'm not going to do a deep dive on the article, but I merely bring it up to illustrate a point. How the fuck are you going to sit there on the one hand and say, if you don't interact on social media, you're a right-wing extremist, and then when you interact on social media with the wrong opinions, wait for it, they deplatform you for being a right-wing extremist? Bit of a catch-22, you think? Maybe. We're going to deplatform you because your opinions don't jive, and we're going to make sure that you don't interact off of social media. Great. And now that you don't interact on social media anymore, that's further proof that you're a right-wing domestic extremist. Do you see how this becomes a Kafka-esque self-fulfilling prophecy? Yes, you do. Even you on the left, you do, but you don't care. Because the people going on the boxcars this time are going to be people you don't like. And again, when I bring up boxcars, I'm being very, very hyperbolic for the moment. But yeah, that's one of those things, man. It's a double standard. But as we know from that team, if it weren't for double standards, they'd have no standards at all. They boot you off of social media. They deplatform you for having the wrong opinions. And then when you don't interact on social media, it becomes confirmation that you are a radicalized domestic right-wing extremist. Well, I guess we can all line up for that. At least everybody that's on this fucking channel. But anyway, that's where we are. So just wanted to bring that around to some of the things that are going on the domestic front. Let's deal with quickly one more thing that goes on the domestic front. Biden to target merchants of death who sell illegal guns as U.S. homicides spike. Apparently, there was a spike in violent crime, particularly homicide, over the course of the lockdown. Yeah, that's what they specify in the article. Over the year of the lockdown and the early part of 2021, which was also the ass end of the lockdown, in 2020 and 2021, there were huge, in some places 100% plus spikes in the homicide rate. I'm sure that wouldn't have had anything to do with the riots and the criminal activity that was allowed to go on as Antifa maggots burned down cities for months at a fucking time. No. According to the Biden administration, it's legitimate law-abiding gun owners that have fueled this thing by doing legitimate federally licensed business with legitimate federally legal guns. Yeah. It's not working. None of these lies are working, particularly this one. Gun sale soared during the 2020 coronavirus lockdown, blah, blah, blah. Here's some more lies that he threw at us this week. I'm going to throw out the big, I'm going to throw out one or two big lies, and I'm going to bring it home with the one thing that we really have to take into account. The one big lie that there were always restrictions on what people could own. For instance, as he said, you couldn't buy cannons. You need to read a history book, Sparky. Most of, if not damn near all, of the artillery pieces fielded by colonial militia during the American Revolution were privately owned. Again, don't take my word for it. Look it up. So again, first of all, big Biden lie. Second of all, read a fucking history book. It's a dumb argument. Yes, those pieces were privately owned. So the thought that the founding fathers would have been totally okay with colonists owning artillery, but somehow repeating firearms would have been one toke over the line, you're completely full of shit. But that's only one of the lies that he fed us this week. Again, the overarching argument, and he presented it. I can't believe the motherfucker said it out loud verbatim. The dumbest argument for gun control. When we say, why do you need military style firearms? First of all, military style firearms like the AR-15 and the AK-47, it's basically Schrodinger's gun. Yeah, Schrodinger's gun. Let me clarify. In the hands of a mass shooter, it is a single-minded weapon of death, infallible, that strikes every target with razor precision. And in the hands of someone who is trained with it and actually trying to defend themselves, well, it's useless for home defense. Schrodinger's gun part 2. It is a weapon of war built for the battlefield. And at the same time, yeah, but it's totally useless against the military. Okay, Sparky, you want to clear that up for me? Right. That's what I thought, because there's no logic involved here. This is the dumbest argument ever. The thought that American citizens, and he said this, if you want to take on the U.S. Army, you're going to have to take on F-15s and nuclear weapons and all these other things, right? Dumbest argument ever. You don't occupy street corners with F-15s and nuclear weapons. And if you think that the U.S. military, the most powerful military machine currently on the face of the planet, as far as we know, China is gaining, that they can't be defeated by a smaller insurgency, I'm going to refer you to a couple million Vietnamese farmers. And when you're done getting interpreters to let the Vietnamese farmers explain to you how fucking stupid you are, we're going to fly you to a sandbox over in a place called Afghanistan, and we're going to let a number of goat herders describe to you how they have been able to take a stand against, again, that most powerful military machine on the planet. Right. Yeah, Bart, but that's different. That's Vietnam. That's Afghanistan. It's different. Yes, you're absolutely correct. It is different. It's different for two very important reasons. Number one, there are more small arms in circulation in the United States than there are in Vietnam or Afghanistan. And the other way that it's different is that in Vietnam and Afghanistan, you didn't run the risk of half the United States military jumping ship and joining the insurgency. If you ever turned United States military against its own fucking citizens, bet your ass that would happen. You'd lose half of them overnight. They would join the resistance and they would take their skills, their training, and their hardware with them. It's a dumb argument. And every time you spout it, you show yourself to be dumb. Sorry, Sparky. If it helps you sleep at night, you can go ahead and run that with your social justice sewing circle, but it's not going to work out in the long run. That's enough for the domestic front. Let's get into some things going on the international front. It seems that the UK Navy got into a little scrape in the Strait of Bosphorous. Yes. Bosphorous Strait. Putin, the bad boogeyman. Boogie, boogie, boogie. Bad boogeyman Putin sent his naval forces and his air forces. Keep in mind, Crimea is now sovereign Russian territory. Like it or not, it's sovereign Russian territory, and it's also the headquarters of the Black Sea Fleet. So when the UK is sailing warships through the Bosphorus Strait and they stray out of Ukrainian waters and into Russian territorial waters that close to the Black Sea Fleet, of course it's going to be taken as an act of provocation. As most of you should know by now who follow the international scene at all, you should be aware of the fact that Vladimir Putin is not a man with whom one should trifle lightly. Not a man, as some people say, with whom one wishes to fuck. The Russian Navy fired warning shots at the British Navy and then sent airstrikes, well, not airstrikes, they said combat aircraft to buzz the British warships in close proximity and then drop bombs in the path of the warships. Basically a nice way of saying, if you keep heading this way, we're going to fuck you up. We don't care about your fish, your chips, your bangers, your mash, and your bad fucking weather and your grind out fucking teeth and your misery. We don't give a fuck that once upon a time the sun never set on your empire. Right now you're an island nation about the size of fucking New Hampshire, and we don't give a fuck what you do. We will fuck you up. He probably said it without that copious use of the word fuck. He seems a little more dignified man than that. What is the first thing that happened? The UK denied that it ever happened. Oh no, there wasn't a single shot fired. And then they released a video. Oh, well, I mean, there were shots fired, but I mean, it was part of a training exercise. And then that theory got shot down. Yeah, there were no bombs dropped. And then video got released of that, and eyewitness testimony started coming in. It happened pretty much exactly as the Russians said. And the UK's fucking denying it. A lot of things are going on the international front right now, and a lot of people are butting up against this. China is doing exercises off of Taiwan. Believe me, with the cadaver that we have in charge, if China wanted Taiwan, they would take it. When they decide that they're ready, they will take it. And Biden will do fuck all nothing. If Putin wanted the Ukraine, he would fucking have it. He demonstrated as much in Georgia when Georgia was dealing with the South Ossetian secession. Look that up online. Google cheats are allowed. South Ossetia attempted to secede from Georgia, and Georgia said, fuck you, we're not going to let it happen. Russia sent in their infantry, and they had decimated the Georgian military before the armor even showed up. Putin is not a man with whom you trifle. Believe me. With what's going on in Crimea, again, 99% ethnically Russian before you spout out of ignorance because you don't fucking read. Crimea was 99% ethnic Russian. The Donbass region of Ukraine is 85 to 90% ethnic Russian. Those ethnic Russians were getting massacred by the Ukrainians. Believe me, if Putin showed anything, he showed restraint. But here's the one thing that I want to address, and then we're going to move on to the final point, and we're going to bring it home for the last 10 minutes. We're being flexed on right now because predators prey on what? Predators prey on the sick and the weak. They prey on the sick and the weak. And right now, the so-called leader that we've put, the so-called figurehead, our cadaver in chief, is clearly sick and he's clearly weak, and they are testing. what China is doing in the South China Sea, the exercises and massing, troop movements and doing the exercises off of Taiwan. They know what they want, and they know that the window is very, very narrow for them to be able to grab it because they understand how American politics works. Keep in mind, the Chinese have been around for millennia. They're playing the long fucking game. When they want to move on Taiwan, they'll take it. Putin, beyond being an agent of the KGB for as many years as he was, beyond being a Russian, period, and a world-class chess player and judo stylist, legit black belt in judo and sambo grappling, he also knows how to play the long game. Anyone deluded enough to think that either of those world leaders, President Xi or President Putin, is afraid of the doddering, addled, senile great-grandfather that we have in office right now, you are terminally fucking deluded. The only reason they haven't moved yet is because they are waiting for the appropriate time to pull the trigger. And that window gets narrower. Because in the midterms, the weak-ass party that is eroding America from within are going to get crushed. They're going to get crushed. GOP is going to take both houses. Biden will likely become a victim of the 25th Amendment. Kamala Harris is ineffective, couldn't pull 1% in her own party's primary. It's going to be a power vacuum. It's going to be nothing. And the two houses of Congress, which will be controlled by the GOP after the midterms, mark my words, they're not going to stand for it. Who's really got the nuclear football? Just a little sidebar question. Because if Joe Biden was my grandfather, if Joe Biden was your grandfather, you'd take his fucking car keys. Look me in the eye and tell me I'm lying. If Joe Biden were your grandfather, you would take his fucking car keys. You really think that the Joint Chiefs of Staff have given him control of the nuclear football? Don't be stupid. You can get on spout, but understand you're spouting from the child's table, and we're going to send you back there. Last 10 minutes, we're going to touch on where we came in. Okay. We're going to touch on where we came in, and I'm going to pull the banner back up from the beginning. I'm going to pull the soundbite back up from Zuby, UK rapper Zuby. I'm going to have to kill that banner real quick. I don't know why people look at me weirdly when I suggest that governments will intentionally kill their own citizens and or allow them to die unnecessarily if it suits their agenda. How many examples do you need? Do you think history has ended and we now live in a fairy tale? Clearly the answer is yes. Here's what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to entertain any of the vaccine conspiracies because let me just tell you point blank, most of them are fucking ridiculous. The government does have the capability to inject you with microchips. They have the ability to do that. Let's admit that they have the ability. Why? Why fucking bother? It would be ineffective compared to the amount of control and tracking that they already have on you. Why do they need to inject you with a fucking chip? They've got your phone. They've got your internet activity. You guys, and you've heard me say it before, guys that are hiding in obscurity. Oh, look, we're hiding away. We're staying off the radar. No, you're fucking not. You're not staying off the radar. You're hiding from the fight. Because even if you've got no social media presence, it's the difference between it taking 17 seconds for them to find me and 3.5 minutes for them to find you. You're not off the radar, Sparky. Don't kid yourself. But again, sidebar, didn't want to get off on that. How many more examples do you need, right? Is it population control? Your speculation is as good as mine. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole with you because I think you can make a case either way, but I'm not committed to either premise. But as you've heard me say before, if you say to yourself, I don't believe the government did this particular thing on this particular way on this particular occasion, I can entertain that and we can have that discussion. But if you look me in the eye, as many are now, and saying our government isn't capable of that sort of thing, you are at best a fool and at worst, a shill, a liar, and a fucking coward. The things that our government has done, if you have any doubts about what they are capable of, including, as Zuby was saying, killing or allowing people to die. Let's deal with allowing people to die first. Allowing people to die unnecessarily. Tuskegee, Alabama, we start there. Or the Tuskegee-like experiments that we did in Guatemala, and El Salvador, and Nicaragua. Killing people or letting them die unnecessarily. Yeah, Bart, but that was so long ago. I mean, it's not anything like, oh, I don't know, what Andrew Cuomo did in New York, where he had a hospital, a Navy hospital ship available to him, and the entire Javits Center converted into a field hospital. And rather than use those facilities and make a political opponent look good, he forced by law, infected COVID patients to be admitted into nursing homes. The death toll is over 15,000 and rising. And then, even as he was planning his book tour and writing his book about what a phenomenal leader he was during a time of national crisis, as old people were dying, thanks to his hand. And this is not speculation. You can look it up. His secretaries have come out and said that he specifically had reports altered and minimized. They pressured the health department to not include the full death count attributed to nursing homes in the report. Instead, the report indicated more than 6,200 nursing home residents had died instead of the nearly 10,000 at the time who had died. And the number's now over 15,000, and they're still trying to bury it. We can talk about Cuomo's sexual harassment scandals, but nobody's talking about that. The Cuomo administration recrafted report on nursing homes to conceal death count. And this report came out as far back as March, and nobody's fucking talking about it. Why? Because as Zuby said, our government is perfectly willing to let people die unnecessarily if it advances an agenda. But are they willing to kill? I think the answer for that is self-evident, because they've demonstrated it time after time after time. But we're going to deal specifically with a gentleman this week by the name of John McAfee, software pioneer, founder of McAfee Antivirus, among a million other things, accomplished hacker, according to some reports, storer of secrets of government and powerful people, according to some other reports, and by his own words, had over 31 terabytes of sensitive information on government officials and high-ranking policy wonks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. John McAfee allegedly hung himself. Sound familiar? Remember we were talking earlier about how the word Epstein has become part of the vocabulary? Well, here's how the narrative is being steered. Since we're going to talk algorithms, you know, that thing that you're supposed to move me up in by giving thumbs up and likes to the videos and reposting and sharing and all that. I had two search engine windows open, one from Google and one from DuckDuckGo, right? I use the same search term, John McAfee facts. And then I thought, no, it's a little too specific. I'm going to say McAfee facts, because everybody knows who the fuck we're talking about. The Google algorithm pulled me up everything about McAfee Software Company. Important facts about McAfee Software Company, important facts about McAfee Antivirus, blah, 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 blah. DuckDuckGo, on the other hand, started ripping off search results. Again, from the same term, DuckDuckGo ripped me off all kinds of important things that you need to know about John McAfee. Go to DuckDuckGo, type in John McAfee important facts, or John McAfee had dirt on the government. I will let you go down that rabbit hole yourself. I am here to reinforce that if you doubt the things of which our government is capable, you are at best deluded. PolitiFact, our fact checkers. This is how the narrative is being shaped, boys and girls. This is how the narrative is being shaped. PolitiFact. The theories resemble those that surrounded registered sex offender Jeffrey Epstein's apparent suicide in jail in 2019. The Epstein didn't kill himself theory was promoted by QAnon supporters, and the McAfee conspiracies have ties to QAnon as well. There you go. You don't have to hide anything. You just tie it to the wrong people. If you believe that, well, you must be one of those dangerous right-wing extremists. You know, those dangerous right-wing extremists that we've got to look out for and crack down on now. You must be one of them. You must be one of those QAnon loonies if you believe this sort of thing. In spite of the fact of McAfee's tweets, I've collected files on corruption in government. For the first time, I'm naming names and specifics. I'll begin with a corrupt CIA agent and 2 Bahamian officials coming today. If I'm arrested or disappear, 31 plus terabytes of incriminating data will be released to the press. And a later tweet had that 31 terabytes of data being stowed in an apartment building in Miami. What happened in Miami-Dade this week? What collapsed? Take a look at the video. It's all about gaslighting. You don't see what you actually see. Cognitive dissonance works great in places like North Korea. The young woman that I discussed last week who escaped North Korea, who was brainwashed to the point where she couldn't understand. She was told that Kim Jong-un, our great leader, was starving along with the rest of us, even though he was fat as fuck. And it's right in front of your face. She was brainwashed. That her cognitive dissonance would not let her believe it. So what is it going to take for you? What is it going to take for the media presentation? What is it going to take for even the most stubborn, brainwashed motherfuckers to finally admit what's right in front of them? She couldn't see that Kim Jong-un was fat as fuck because her cognitive dissonance and the brainwashing was that thorough. How many of you can't look at an addled cadaver with clear early onset dementia and cognitive dysfunction and say that there's no cognitive dysfunction? Your cognitive dissonance is refusing to let you see the cognitive dysfunction, and you think that he's a real live breathing functioning human. He's not. But how deep does the cognitive dissonance run? And again, if all they have to do is accuse you of being a QAnon supporter for believing what's right in front of you with regard to Jeffrey Epstein or now John McAfee. And I want you to take everything that I've said in the last 5 minutes and go down this rabbit hole yourself. We'll be talking more about it next week as more details emerge, because I don't like to do speculation. But you better get it through your head real quick. You may not believe that your government did a particular thing in a particular way on a particular occasion. But if you, at long last, still believe that your government and the power structure that it supports and the power structure by which it is supported is not capable of such things, well, now I've got 2 bodies for you that didn't hang themselves to prove you wrong. I am the Reverend. That is the gospel. We're running just a little over time. I'm trying to squeeze it all in. I got to get my structure a little bit better, and I got to cover the McAfee thing a little bit better next week. Spent too long on the domestic stuff, but anyway, guys, thank you for being patient. If anything that I said was new information or anything helped you out, I'm going to pass around that digital collection plate. I am on PayPal, I'm on Venmo, I'm on Cash App, I'm on Facebook Pay. You guys want to drop me a little coin? As I've said before, I'd rather 100 people drop me $3 than one guy drop me $300, because the goal is to reach more people. So if you want to help me out, that's great. If you can't help me out, that's cool too. What you can do for me, if you want, and if you'd be so kind, is to spread the word about the program. Let them know you got some fat old toothless cripple that rants and raves once a week for an hour on YouTube and Facebook Live. He's a kindred spirit. He's a like mind. You might dig what he has to say. Spread the gospel about the program. Turn more people onto him. Hopefully we'll see some new people out here next week. But in the interim, remember the most important thing is we go out with a little bit of clutch, a little fortunate son again on suggestion of Ryan Jenkins. Remember, guys, on the way, the 3 prime directives: be the signal in a world full of noise. Be the light in a world full of darkness, and always, always, always be that strength in a world full of weakness. I am the Reverend. That is the gospel. I appreciate every one of you guys, man. Again, I'm going to try not, yeah, Rob, that's a good point. I'm going to try not to get Epstein. I appreciate every one of you guys for coming out, man. You guys make me feel like less of a lone voice in the wilderness. For all of you guys who are showing up for the first time, hey, man, hopefully we'll be back next Sunday. Again, this is what I do. This is a sermon. If you find more like minds and kindred spirits, turn them on to the program. But in the meantime, between time, man, talk amongst yourselves, support each other, and realize, people, that while our time is now, that while now is our time, that it's going to be a struggle getting there. Be ready, because the times are dark and they're getting darker. We don't do black pills around here. Don't let it get you down, because no, in the end, we together are an unstoppable force. Nothing can stop an idea whose time has come, and our time has come. So get your body strong, your spirit strong, your mind strong. Interact with other people who are like-minded individuals and kindred spirits. Hopefully we'll see you here next Sunday. Love you guys. Appreciate you being here. Take good care of yourselves. Take good care of each other. I am the Reverend. That is the gospel. See you next Sunday. Thanks for coming out, guys. Love you all. Be safe. Stay strong. Later. Peace.